All right, my little ponies. Who's ready for a bedtime story? Why don't we continue from last night with Forget-Me-Not? As you may remember, the mare, Lucy, was about to share a story with the fillies, Glitterchip and Conway, and with the mysterious stallion. The trunk of a black gold wagon flipped open. Dust scattered itself in the air as light dimly touched the dusty objects within. A red unicorn stallion with a long, scraggly brown mane coughed and waved a hoof around his face to clear the dust. His light brown eyes scanned the contents of the trunk, only to find that nothing of value was inside. Putting down his brown trench coat, he shook his head. Well, still nothing. A little gray Pegasus filly with a yellow mane stood there and shook at him sadly.
No food? Not even a little?
Not even a mouse-sized little, added the stallion. Both of the ponies stood there and looked up the long, desolate road. Old, banged, deteriorating carts lined the sides of the cracked and blasted highway.
We've searched all of the good carts already, and still not a thing,
the filly said in a discouraged tone. Hey, kiddo, cheer up, the stallion said with a smile. We've just got to try a little harder, that's all. In the distance, the ruins of what seemed like a large city could be seen. Tall ruined buildings stood still as the dark clouds hovered above with the wind whistling.
It's just that I'm hungry.
Well, that simply won't do. It just won't. Come on, let's keep moving. Maybe we'll find something tasty, the stallion chirped enthusiastically. Trotting lightly, they both continued down the road at an easy pace.
Like, what do you think we could find to eat in the city, Wester?
The filly asked. I'm not sure. Maybe cake, or better, cupcakes, the pony called Wester replied. The filly's mouth watered as the thought of warm cupcakes filled her mind.
With that pink swirly frosting?
You bet, kiddo, Wester chuckled. Moving farther up the road, they saw a roadside market. Markets such as this were common shopping centers outside of large cities, and more importantly, food might be inside, ripe for the taking. Pausing along the side of the road, Wester stared at the store cautiously. We could try there. The filly scanned the area around the store and said uneasily,
It doesn't look like there's any pony there. Do you think it's safe?
If we move quickly, we should be fine. But you're right, there's usually something hanging around these stores. Hopefully, no ponies home. So, might just get lucky with this one. Coming up to the store, both ponies moved carefully around the side of the building. The filly followed closely behind Wester, who had a gun on his leg ready to fire. And opening his holster, he peeked behind the corner of the store. He had intended on entering from the back of the building. That way, even if there were traps or someone inside, they would be less likely to get their attention. Like he had thought, there was a back door with nothing around it. Gesturing the filly to move on, they both trotted over to the door. As they approached it, a sense of hopefulness built itself inside them. Only, just as Wester tried opening the door, he found that it was locked tightly. The once hopeful feeling they felt faded away instantly. Great, Wester grumbled.
What are we going to do, Wester?
At his side was an old metal pipe that had fallen off the building. Picking it up in his mouth, he mumbled, Stand back, Lucky. Like he had instructed, she took a few steps back, and with several powerful swings at the doorknob, it snapped off, causing the locked door to easily move back. Spitting out the old pipe, Wester continued to spit out the nasty taste that was left in his mouth. Lucky, remind me that pipes don't make good food. Lucky giggled.
You're so silly, Wester.
Wester smiled at her and pushed the door open. It was almost completely dark inside the store, minus the sounds of metallic echoes he had made from his pipe. It was quiet. It seems to be empty, Wester said, poking his head through the door.
Does that mean there might be food in there?
Lucky gasped happily with wide eyes. Yep, it sure does, kiddo. But just remember, vandalism is wrong. Lucky rolled her eyes at his silliness and followed him inside the old pre-war structure. Wester pulled out a flashlight from his saddlebag, and, with Lucky's help, he tied it to his shoulder. The building creaked and moaned while they walked in. Their hoof steps echoed off of the walls, almost giving the illusion that someone else might be there. Broken and smashed, the dozens of aisles that once held food seemed to be bare. Only rusted, crushed-up cans remained. Lucky picked up one of the cans dishearteningly.
Oh, so much for food.
Wester walked over to the right of the very last aisle, for next to it was a pushable door labeled Storage. Smiling, he waved his hoof for her to come. There might be something in the storage. You never know what we might find. She galloped over to him, and together they pushed open the door to the storage room. Sadly, not much could be found in the storage either. All that was left were old metal boxes on shelves that were either tipped over or smashed. Wester pointed to one section of the small storage room. Go check those boxes over there. They don't seem as smashed as the others. I'll check the shelves over here. Lucky stepped over to the boxes Wester had mentioned, feeling down about their misfortune. With each step she took, she kicked one of the empty rusted cans aside until she almost tripped on something. Stumbling slightly forward, she looked down at what kind of heavier object could have caused her to trip. Oddly enough, there, rolling slowly away from her, was a can of beans, and a fairly large one at that. Picking it up, her eyes lit up with joy.
Wester, look what I found,
she claimed, bouncing over to him. He blinked a few times at her and shined his light down on the object she was carrying. Once his own eyes saw what she was so happy about, he too lit up with a cheerful mood. Why, Lucky, that's my girl. This should be plenty for both of us. Lucky glanced at the worn labeling on the can.
It should be enough for both of us, but they're a little old and a little stale.
I'm glad me and the beans have something in common, Wester chuckled.
Stop it,
she laughed, playfully nudging him in the foreleg.
You're not old.
Their happy moment did not last long. A sudden, loud bang instantly set frightening chills down their spines. The bang was followed by the sounds of doors being slammed open. What came next was the last thing they wanted to hear. The voices of other ponies, and not just the voices of scavengers, but sound raiders. Wester put a hoof to his mouth and motioned Lucky to follow him. Both ponies stepped lightly as they came to the door that led back out to the store, before placing their heads right against it. Together, they listened to the unexpected company to confirm whether or not they were friendly. From what they could hear, it had sounded like there were 3 ponies, each stallions with rough, scratchy voices. Wester turned off his flashlight quickly and listened to them speak. Hacksaw, check over there. The boss will have our heads if we come back empty-hoofed. Dozer, you check those aisles, and keep that gun of yours ready. There's a whole pack of ghouls around here, and the last thing we need is to stumble onto those Pushing the door slightly open, Wester stuck his head out to get a look of who was where. Luckily, the cover of darkness had hid him well from their sight. As he scanned the market around him, he tried to see what weapons the ponies were armed with. It was already clear that one had a gun, and it was likely that the others did too. In the darkness, he could faintly make out the shapes of the ponies. From what he could see, it looked as if they had roughly configured armor made from various pieces of scrap, along with what had looked like outrageously styled manes. He was absolutely sure they were raiders. Moving his head down to the little filly at his side, he whispered, Lucky, stay close to me, and step lightly. If we're careful enough, the darkness should keep us out of sight. Now, we're just going to go back the way we came, so It should be simple, right? She nodded at him.
Right. Easy peasy.
He smiled at her and pushed the door open slightly more for both of them to move through. Just as Lucky left the storage room, Wester eased the door shut and led her back the way they came. They kept themselves low, using the aisles as cover. All the while they did their best to avoid the dozens of cans that littered the floor. The raiders' hoof steps echoed loudly off of the walls as they scavenged. "You find anything?" one raider called out. "Nope, not a fucking thing. It would help if there was some fucking light in here." "Here, let me see if the lights will work. Sometimes these old places got generators," the voice replied. The two ponies continued to move easily to the back exit, and just as they did, a loud click echoed through the store. A loud hum followed, and a few lights overhead flickered on. The once shadow-covered store was now flooded by light, exposing the two ponies. One raider had just left an aisle and saw them. "What the hell? Hijack! I found some pony!" Several insane laughs followed from the pony named Hijack, who could be heard dashing over to his comrade's position. "Don't just stand there. Kill him. Fresh meat. Oh, won't the boss be happy about this?" Terror filled the two ponies, but Wester knew she needed to be protected. Pushing her forward, he shouted at her as he charged the pony who had spotted them. "Run, Lucky! I'll hold them off!" Lucky did as she was told and ran off toward the back exit. Wester pulled out a knife from a sheath on his coat. Sprinting toward the raider, he tackled the pony fiercely. Like he had guessed, the raider was armored with various pieces of scrap. What was even more relieving was the fact that the pony only had a spiked bat as a weapon. Both of them wrestled on the ground, tugging and beating each other ferociously. With the knife gripped firmly in his teeth, Wester took huge, clean swipes at the raider. Large, bloody gashes were across the raider's body, with blood profusely leaking from his wounds. The raider named Hijack, a purple unicorn stallion with a large mohawk mane, saw his comrade fight with Wester. In the corner of his eye, he saw Lucky running off toward the exit. "Quick, Hacksaw, get the girl. I'll take care of this fucker." Levitating at Hijack's side was a double-barreled shotgun ready to fire. From his current position, both Dozer and Wester were in view. It was difficult to take a shot, so he galloped toward the two in hope that he could blow Wester's head apart right next to him. Wester finally managed to pin the raider to the ground and slammed the end of the knife into his neck. Blood shot out from the wound, as with each of the pony's fading heartbeats, more blood would squirt out like a fountain. Laughing madly, Hijack and his weapon ready came right next to Wester, and putting the gun's barrel against the back of his head, he smirked. "Nighty-night, asshole." Before he could fire, Wester ducked, and when the first shot of the raider's gun went off, Wester got low. Using his hind legs, he bucked the raider in the face, causing him to stagger back and drop his weapon. Hijack swore before he recovered himself. By then, Wester already had the gun in his mouth, and, with the last shot, Wester shot him in the head from point-blank range. Falling to the ground, Hijack's body twitched unnaturally. Wester dropped the gun from his mouth, tasting the blackened raider's saliva, although his eyes widened as a terrible sound froze him.
"Wester, help!"
Lucky cried out toward the end of the store. Along with her cries for help, he heard the devilish cries of the raider named Hacksaw. "Stop squirming. I'm just gonna have a little fun with you is all." Fury burned wildly inside him, and sprinting as fast as he could, he made his way to the source of the cries. There, near the exit they had come through, was the raider, his hooves wrapped around her, with a huge grin spread across his face. "Wester!" she cried once more, tears rolling down her cheeks. Rage filled his mind, and a magical aura surrounded his horn. His eyes glowed brightly as the magical energy consumed his body. And with a powerful blast of magical power, the raider let go of Lucky and rose up into the air. Bucking and fighting, the raider panicked as he was lifted higher and higher into the air.
What the hell? Put me down! Fucking put me down right now!
He wailed in panic, but soon the raider started to be consumed by the magical energies around him, and screaming horrifically in pain, he disintegrated into a fine dust. No sooner had the raider turned into dust that the power around Wester faded, and with all of the magical energy gone, he fell to the ground, coughing hoarsely. Lucky was shaking, and as the soft specks of dust fell on her, she saw her friend kneeling on the ground coughing.
Wester!
She exclaimed, rushing to his side. Each hacking cough Wester made had caused large amounts of blood to come spilling out of his mouth. His legs were trembling, and his voice had become low and raspy. She had one hoof on his back, patting him gently, and in an urgent tone she asked,
Wester, are you okay? You did it again. You used your magic again.
Taking deep breaths, Wester stood up, wiping the blood from his mouth. Fine, Lucky. It's just, he had you, and...
No,
she interjected.
I know I was in danger, but you know what happens when you use magic. You know what it does.
She hugged his leg tightly, sobbing softly into the sleeve of his brown coat. He looked down at her tremble on his leg, with her eyes on the verge of tears, and, hugging his leg tighter, she muttered worryingly,
Please, promise me you won't use your magic again. I don't want to see you hurt yourself.
He coughed lightly a few times before responding. Lucky, sometimes I...
No, promise me.
She said, tearing up while hugging him. Placing his other foreleg around, he whispered back to her, I promise I won't use my magic again. She looked up at him, sniffling.
You promise?
I do, he answered softly with a warming smile, and patting her on the back, he said in a reassuring tone, Come on, kiddo, let's get out of here. It's getting late. Well, my little ponies, this story was a lot more intense than I remember. Maybe this isn't fit for a bedtime story anymore. Maybe it's more of a weekly radio drama. But for now, I hope you sleep well and have sweet dreams. Good night.